Hello, and welcome to the Cleaning Lady podcast. There's quite a few cleaning podcasts out there that tell you how to run a cleaning business, how to make money from it, and how to start one up. But this podcast is about my experiences day to day, the challenges, the exhaustion, and everything that goes with running a cleaning business. And it's not all sparkling taps and mansions. So, yes, it can be rewarding, but you can have days where you just want to give up. And I have had a few days like that this week, to be honest. So I suspect that one of my cleaners has taken a client. Actually, I think she's taken every single client that I've ever given her. And it hurts. It hurts like hell, actually. One of the most rage inducing and hurtful parts of running a cleaning agency is when cleaners take clients. You take on the cleaner, you train them, and you give them all the hours that they want, and you introduce that cleaner to the client. You do all the work behind the scenes, and they decide suddenly that they can get a few more pounds by taking that client and working independently from your company. But with your clients. Those clients they met through me, through my company. The clients that contacted me because they wanted a cleaning service. And it really annoys me because if they wanted an independent cleaner, then why didn't they just go and get one themselves? Look on Gumtree or whatever. They could have vetted them and made sure that they had the insurance and trialed them and everything else. But this happens in cleaning. Actually, it happens in any kind of service business where you introduce someone to a client. And you really do have to protect yourself. So I actually have a clause in my contracts to say that if a client takes a cleaner within 12 months of them leaving, then they have to pay a £1,000 fine. Yes, it is excessive, but it's meant to be because it's a deterrent. But the problem is, how do you prove it? Because you can't just go off of a gut feeling to enforce that clause. So, if you run a small business and this has happened to you, you know exactly how it feels because it isn't about losing money from the client who's now left. It's about the trust and the respect. And to, to put it bluntly, it fucking hurts. The first time that this happened was when I put my prices up by £1 an hour. I put my prices up annually. And it was pre-pandemic, so the client was at work all day. But as soon as I put the price up, my amazing cleaner, Carly, went to do the clean, and there was a note on the table for her, basically saying, "Give me a call. Here's my phone number. And, I can offer you some more money if you work for me and we'll get rid of the agency." So basically, the client tried to poach my cleaner. And I have to say that I was so flattered by what happened next because Carly rang me absolutely outraged. I mean, she was furious. She said that she didn't want to work for that client again because she thought it was really cheeky. And she said, when I go on holiday or I'm ill, you cover. And she was right. But Carly could have taken the extra money and she could have gone behind my back and said nothing. But she didn't. She was genuinely offended on my behalf. That really meant a lot to me and it still does. And I trust her completely and she's still with me now, 7 years on. But unfortunately, not every situation has gone like that. Now, before I go any further, I won't be using any real names. As much as I want to, I don't want to get sued. So yes, a cleaner that I used to have, I'll call her Louise, years ago. I remember that she was trying to get her own clients and work independently. That's not a problem, but every time she got one of her own private clients, she dropped one of the clients that she had through me without any notice. So, and when you run a cleaning agency, that's one of the most stressful things because the client doesn't care that the cleaner has disappeared. They're paying for a service, so they want their clean covered. Anyway, eventually I said to Louise, look, I kind of feel like you're using me as a stepping stone because it feels like you're only staying with me until something better comes along. And I said, if you want to leave, then leave, but, please don't leave me as a stepping stone. And she basically said, well, I'll leave then. And that was that. So I rang one of her clients to explain that Louise had left and that I had another cleaner for him. And he said, look, I want to keep her. Um, he said, she's going independently and I've already arranged that I'm going to go with her. I was like, what? What? Like, really? What? Hang on. But he wasn't the one that had interviewed her and trained her, and he took on my services because he wanted somebody that he could trust. He didn't want to worry about interviewing and training himself. But anyway, I reminded him of the clause in the contract about not taking on cleaners introduced through the agency. And he just said that the clause was stupid and that I couldn't do anything about it because she wasn't working for me anymore. Huh, that is where he was wrong, because that is literally the point of the clause. It doesn't just mean don't take the cleaner while she's actively working for me. It means you can't use my business to find a cleaner and then take them privately straight after. Otherwise, what's the point of the agency existing? But this person also used a care agency for his disabled son, and they sent a carer every day to his house. And I said to him, look, the care agency that you use probably has the same sort of clause. Care agencies, cleaning agencies, recruitment agencies, they all have restrictive covenants in their contracts to prevent this very thing from happening. Because businesses have to protect themselves. It costs money to run a business, the advertising, the insurance, the admin, finding and training reliable people. Um, anyway, he hung up on me. But did I enforce this clause? No, I didn't. And I think I was so busy at the time. And I just didn't have the energy to deal with yet another stressful thing, especially with dealing with trying to get another cleaner and, now that Louise had left. Um, then there was another cleaner, and I'm going to call her Mary. Now, when Mary left, all her clients left too. And I'd already had my suspicions because as soon as she started working with the clients, all communication stopped because she took all their numbers. And that to me is always a red flag because normally clients will message me about little things like, can we change the day? Can she come a bit earlier? We're away next week. Can we add an extra hour? And so on. But with Mary's clients, they just went directly through Mary. And sometimes clients will question what they're paying me for if they're going through the cleaner instead. I actually now always ask that all communications go through me and that the cleaners and clients are not to exchange numbers because it does maintain the relationship with the client. Even if it's just to say, can you get glass cleaner? Because yes, you can say, can you get glass cleaner? But then you can add like, oh, how's your family? How's your son? How's your mum doing now? All sorts of things. It just keeps that relationship going. But also, by not exchanging numbers, they remember that the cleaner is through an agency because they're talking to the agency directly. But one of the other issues with client and cleaner communicating directly is that I'm not kept in the loop. Because once, when Mary was on a holiday, cover was arranged, and it was then that I found out that the client had not only moved house, but he was actually having more hours than he was paying for. And I was completely unaware of this because the client had told the cleaner and not me, and the cleaner didn't tell me. Anyway, so Mary decided to leave, and when I asked for all the keys to be returned back to me, she said, "Oh, the clients have already asked for them back." And I thought that was a bit strange, but then when she left, all her clients did too. So I knew something wasn't right. And this is what you need proof for if you want to enforce whatever's in your contract. But then a few months later, one of those clients came back to me and she said, I'm so sorry, I'm a cleaning whore. I think that's probably the best line that anyone's ever said. But anyway, she basically said that she'd been having cleans with Mary after she ended the contract with me and that she felt bad about it, which is why she came back. I did appreciate the honesty, but I kind of already knew, or at least I strongly suspected. And I told the client that her daughter worked for me too, and I had exactly the same suspicions about the daughter. And she just said, well, I can tell you now, I know that her daughter's doing the same thing. So you really need to watch out. But again, I didn't have any solid evidence. So I never said anything, but I did keep my eye on her. So Mary's daughter, I'll call Alina, same sort of thing. As soon as she started working for me, all communication with the clients just stopped. And it was that same pattern. And this is where it becomes a real problem because when the cleaner becomes the main point of contact, the agency loses visibility. But what happened with Alina was that she lost every single client that I gave her. But whenever she lost a client, she didn't want a replacement. And this is the thing about losing clients. I have girls who have worked with me for years and years. They don't lose clients. So Alina was either a really terrible cleaner or she was taking my clients. And she wasn't a terrible cleaner. Another time, Alina said to me that one of her clients, Susie, had asked for the key back. And then a couple of weeks later, Susie said that she didn't want to continue with our services. Coincidence? I don't know. Another time that Alina was on holiday, I contacted one of her clients to tell them who was cleaning that day. But instead of the client replying to me, the client contacted Alina while she was on holiday to say that she didn't want anyone else to go. Why not just reply to my message instead of contacting the cleaner who's on holiday? But Alina was also very unreliable. But I didn't know the full extent of it because the clients weren't telling me. And Alina never phoned in sick with me. She would contact the clients directly. One day, though, she did contact me to say that she was ill and she asked if I could arrange cover for one of her ladies. So I rang the client and said, Alina's off sick today. I know she's usually very reliable, but I do have somebody else that can come today. Anyway, the client rang me straight back and said, actually, she isn't reliable. I haven't had a clean for the last 3 times and she's always changing days last minute, saying that she can't come. The last 3 times, and I knew absolutely nothing about it. So that's another thing that happens when communication goes around the agency instead of through the agency. The business owner has no idea and the clients get annoyed and, sometimes clients leave because of it. So anyway, I said I'd give her somebody else and she's very happy now because that's what I'm there for. And I said to the client, well, why didn't you tell me? And she said, oh, I don't know. I just didn't think to tell you. If something isn't working, I can fix it, but only if I know about it. Anyway, so I always had this feeling that Alina was taking my clients. I couldn't prove it, but I knew something wasn't right. So yes, all her clients left one by one and she never wanted a replacement. So when she first started with me, she was full-time. And by the end, she had only 2 fortnightly clients left. Now, most cleaners want the hours replaced. If they lose a client, they want another one. That's normal. But Alina didn't. Anyway, one of her 2 remaining clients contacted me and said that she was moving house and wanted to terminate the contract because she was moving out of the area. But something didn't feel right. So I checked Rightmove and that client's house had actually sold a year before. So the client had lied. And then Alina said that the client had moved to another part of the country just the weekend before. So it was total bullshit. And I'm not stupid, but I just thought, well, I haven't got proof. I'm not going to bother chasing this. I'm just going to let Alina go now because she's only got 1 client left anyway. So I contacted Alina and I said, thanks for working with me. But now that you've only got 1 client left, like 1 client once a fortnight, there's no point really in continuing. Because, it costs me to have her on my insurance as well. And then she said, well, I really want to keep Sarah, who was her last client. But by that point, I'd already arranged for somebody else to go. Fast forward to the beginning of this week, and the client has now said that she's found a local independent cleaner. Do I have proof that it's Alina? No. Do I strongly suspect it? Damn right I do, because Alina really wanted to keep this client, and I'm pretty sure that she's contacted her directly and said, oh, I'll work for you and then you don't have to worry about paying the agency fee anymore. So it's always the same. Cleaner and client exchange number, then the client leaves. Sometimes, though, they do come back and they tell me. So one of Alina's old clients contacted me a few months ago. She used to be a client of Alina's a couple of years ago and then she left. But she told me that during those 2 years, she had actually taken on Alina privately because Alina basically said to her, I'll clean for you, and it'll be cheaper than going through the agency. Said that she was so unreliable that she wanted to return to me. But the client was actually genuinely shocked when I mentioned the non-poaching clause. Apparently she didn't realise, which, I'll be honest, I'm not convinced. Because I think people don't understand exactly what they're doing when they cut the agency out. They just don't always understand the consequences until the cleaner becomes unreliable and there's no one there to sort it out. The client thinks they're being clever by saving a few pounds, and the cleaner thinks they're being clever by taking the clients directly. But when the cleaner lets them down, where do they come back? To the agency. The same agency that they tried to cut out. And it doesn't just happen when cleaners leave. It can happen when you sack someone too. So you think you've sacked the cleaner, but then the cleaner takes all the clients. So actually, you haven't sacked that cleaner at all. You're the one that's been sacked. And this is exactly what happened with Lilia. I had to let her go, and she went bleating to the client that she'd been fired. And before we got the chance to explain to her clients that they were having another cleaner, one of the clients contacted me and said that she'd found her own cleaner and wanted to terminate the services. So Shola, my amazing and wonderful second in command, she helps me run the business and I don't know what I'd do without her. She basically said, look, if you're planning on taking Lilia on privately, then there is a substantial fee that you have to pay. And then the cheek of it, I got an email straight after that she didn't think the fee was fair, because always been so loyal to me and she'll continue to be loyal. If it doesn't work out with Lilia, then she'll come back. Like, I'm not going to take her back. But is she kidding? But that's the brutal reality of running a cleaning agency. And, she didn't even know the reason why I fired Lilia, because you can't actually say to the client, I fired your cleaner because, but it could have been theft or the visa expiring. It could have been anything. And the client doesn't know the reason for the dismissal. They don't know the full story. They only know whatever the cleaner's told them. And that's why communication matters so much, because the minute the cleaner becomes the main point of contact, the agency loses control. I don't mean control in a nasty way. I mean control of standards, like the reliability and the cover. If I don't know that the cleaner's missed 3 cleans, I can't step in. Now, I know that some people listening might think, well, the cleaner does the work, so why shouldn't she keep the client? And if a cleaner finds their own clients by paying for their own advertising, takes the risk, handles their own insurance and deals with the awkward conversations and builds their business, then fair enough. Absolutely fine, go for it. But if they get that client through an agency, then that's different, because the agency has done the work to bring that client and the cleaner together, has paid for all the insurance and everything else that goes on behind the scenes. It seems that people love cutting out the middleman until they realise that the middleman was the one holding everything together. And that's why businesses have contracts. And it's not because we're being difficult or petty. It's because without those terms, some people would happily use small businesses as a free introduction service. We all have clauses in our contracts, because if we spend money finding people and matching people and managing people, then we have to protect that. We have to protect our businesses. And we're not charities. And we're not here to provide free matchmaking. So make sure your clients understand that they can't just take cleaners introduced by your business, and keep the communication going through the agency where possible. And don't feel guilty for protecting your business, because you're not just taking a cut, you're running a whole machine. That's the end of this episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Cleaning Lady podcast. Have a fantastic week, and I will be back next week. In the meantime, happy cleaning.